Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to put out some initial thoughts on Endless Heist, the upcoming event that's going to be starting in a few days' time. So this is one of the December 2021 events, and it's probably up there with Endless Delve as the two that are most removed from the core Path of Exile game experience. Because this event is so new, there's going to be a whole lot of things to discuss that will underpin some of the decisions we might make as to what builds to play. Most importantly, we'll be discussing what items will be very easy to get your hands on, what items will be hard to get your hands on but will exist, and what items will be completely inaccessible. So for instance, there will be absolutely no access to the Flask Atziri's Promise in this event. There will be absolutely no access to the Uber Elder unique drop Indigon. And so those items not existing rules out certain builds from consideration. But on the flip side, there'll be plenty of access, more so than in the core game, to things like +1 charge synthesis rings. And so maybe that's something that if you're a power gamer, you might want to actually anticipate being able to get your hands on, even if you're not someone that would usually play quite enough to pick up one of those in a normal trade league. So the first thing that needs to be said is that there is a fantastic heist cheat sheet that is available on Reddit, and I'll put a link to it down in the description below. This is an essential resource. It contains the information you need to know, firstly, which of the various rogues has which skills. That information is easily found in-game. But what's not so easily found in-game is connecting the skills that are required to complete a heist to the reward chests that are available in it. This information is definitely right. It's being checked by a lot of players, and it's really useful as a resource. If, for instance, you decide, you know what I really need now? I need Metamorph Catalysts. You can then have a look here and say, oh, Metamorph Catalysts, the only way to get those is from Demolition Heists, and therefore you have a way to focus on the specific heists that are most important for your character to complete at that time. This will be useful in trade enabled, but where it will really shine is if you elect to play the solo self-found version of the Endless Heist event. You can play Endless Heist in hardcore or softcore, and you can play it in solo self-found or trade enabled. Both of these are independent decisions you can make, and I think that there's merits to all of them. So with that out of the way, this event is going to be like Endless Delve in some ways, but not quite. It's going to be a much higher power event than the Endless Delve event was. This is despite the fact that there's no crafting bench still, and that's not even considering the additional power that's unlocked by trading. So characters will be much stronger than characters were in the Endless Delve event. Well-rolled rares, stacked decks, raw currency, uniques that are drop anywhere, replica uniques, all of these will allow powerful characters, and 6 links will be common, which is a huge divergence from the experience of the Endless Delve event. However, Heist does not scale as high as Endless Delve does in terms of content difficulty. The hardest content in the event, level 83 blueprints, generally feel to me to be about as difficult as depth 300 to 360 delves. So 300 if you don't roll them aggressively, 360 if you do. Experienced players should expect, therefore, to be able to beat the event, should they choose to play a powerful build. For many, this event will be about how quickly can I establish a character that can smoothly defeat level 83 Grand Heists, even in the hardcore version of the event. For other players, of course, they'll be chasing other things. Maybe they're going to try to be one of the first 5 people to reach level 100 in each ascendancy, and therefore lock themselves in for a Demigod's Authority. And I do think that the Demigod's Authorities will go only to people who reach level 100 in this event. I do believe that, at least in the softcore and trade-enabled version of this event, that there will be 5 or more level 100s in every ascendancy, because Heist just disgorges unbelievable amounts of character experience. Of course, it's perfectly possible to enjoy the event with no intention or expectation of ever reaching the point where you can smoothly beat level 83 Grand Heists. So what items are going to be rare but obtainable in the event? So consider these trade-only and very exclusive items. So in the way that something like Mageblood or Headhunter is extremely exclusive in Trade League, and then you've got a sort of secondary layer of items like Replica Farrell's Fur that are somewhat exclusive. These items will be somewhere on that spectrum. So plan your builds accordingly, and that means plan on not having these unless you're someone that's a power gamer. So boss drops with divination cards, and here I'm using Dying Sun as an example, as well as Awaken added cold damage support. Awaken support gems, of course, coming from 2 different divination cards. Redeemer's Exalted Orb is another thing in this category, because there is the divination card, the Long Con. These boss drop divination cards tend to be very, very, very rare, And they will come out of stacked decks because Heist drops an enormous amount of stacked decks, but they probably won't come out of stacked decks for you. They will come out of them for someone in the trade league, and you'll therefore potentially be able to get them, but they'll be hard to get. Next is Conqueror Influence Heist bases, like a pneumatic dagger that's influenced. These are something that you can only get by using a Conqueror's Exalted Orb on these, and it has to be the right Conqueror's Exalted Orb. There'll be very few Conqueror's Exalted Orbs because they only come, as far to the best of my knowledge in this event, from the Divination card, the Long Con, and that Divination card is rare. Then there's synthesized items. These will be rare, but they will be obtainable, and actually they'll be more common than they are in trade leagues. That said, synthesized items do cap out at item level 83 in this event. So what's common in Heist? 5+ linked versions of common and uncommon uniques. So if you want to use, say, Ice Tomb in your build for some reason, it will be very common to get yourself a 5-link one. You'll be able to do this easily. Likewise, if you wanted to use Replica Infractum, or Infractum for that matter, you can count on getting a 6-link version of this reasonably easily. Craftable 6-links from Divination cards will be common. These will drop in armor chests, also weapon chests as well, but they're much less useful. Tier 2 rarity uniques that have Divination cards will be widely available. So I'm using Chevron's Wrappings as an example here. This has a Divination card that drops not a lot from armor chests, but enough that you can probably count on self-compiling a set before you hit level 97 in the event. And as well as that, you'll be able to trade for this card because it's going to drop for a lot of people. People are going to know it's valuable to other players, and therefore you can count on getting this item. However, Tier 2 rarity uniques like Brass Dome that do not have Divination cards, these are going to be rare. Tier 1 rarity uniques such as Rizlatha's Coil and Tier 0 ones such as Headhunter, these will remain exclusive even if there are Divination cards for them, as there are in both the cases of Rizlatha's Coil and Headhunter. Very good physical damage attack weapons will exist, and quite a lot of them. These will drop from Enchanted Armaments blueprints, which can drop some really good items. Now, most Enchanted Armaments blueprints you run will not have a good item in them, but enough of them will that across the Trade League economy, there will be heaps of these. This will be a really, really easy event to gear up a physical damage attack weapon-based build on it. Likewise, spellcaster weapons, very good spellcaster weapons occasionally come out of Grand Heist. Quality gems will be everywhere. Alternate quality versions will be attainable, and superior ones will be very, very common. Glassblower's Baubles will be available, although not as direct drops. They're actually pretty rare in Heist, but you can upgrade your whetstones. So do keep that in mind. You're going to want to do that. Cluster Jewels, item level 83 and down will be very common. 84 plus will not be available at all. But if you're looking to make a build that requires certain Cluster Jewel bases, you'll be able to get the bases. Actually, rolling that Cluster Jewel will be another thing, and you will definitely have to settle for something that is not your idea of a perfect Cluster Jewel. You'll need to find something that is obtainable and reasonably strong for your build. So what should you prioritize? I think you want to prioritize not dying. Dying in Heist hurts a lot more than it does in the normal game. Now, obviously, for hardcore players, that's going to be the case anyway, but for softcore players, it can be a bit of a shock. I know that my default way of doing bosses when I'm undergeared is to just say, you know what, I'm just going to throw 6 portals at it, whereas that's not an option in Heist at all. So you should consider playing proven hardcore builds. And check, of course, that they aren't dependent upon unobtainable uniques in the event. Secondly, DPS requirements are lower than they are in a normal league. Heist unique monsters are tanky. So as an example, I checked up the stats on the Backbreaker, which is one of the more tanky uniques in the Heist content, and it actually has more hit points than a Phoenix does at the same level. But the Backbreaker is missing a bunch of immunities the Phoenix has, so it doesn't have the Curse Resilience, it doesn't have the same level of elemental resistances. The key thing though is that Backbreaker is not a required kill. You can complete a heist while just running away from tankiest monsters like that. Don't worry about prioritizing Rogue XP, it'll come fast, but you do want to worry about Rogue gear, especially for Huck, who is buffed a couple of leagues back, and Cast. I think you'll be using those 2 rogues a lot in this event. Economy considerations is the next thing I wanted to brainstorm a little. So if you're an SSF player, you can skip this section without losing much. Maybe you'd be interested in what I think will be rare and less rare. But in a normal trade league, Exalted Orb demand is unlimited because meta mods exist. The primary use case for Exalted Orbs for experienced players is actually not to apply an additional mod to a rare item. It is to pay for prefixes cannot be changed and suffixes cannot be changed crafts. Power gamers want bulk exalts to use these metamods, whereas casual players want exalts not because they want to use the intrinsic effect of the exalted orb to slam an item, but because they quickly learn that power gamers will trade very good items for their exalts. So in a normal league, a Chaos Orb demand is driven by Zana mods. Neither is going to be the case here, so you should expect cheap exalts and, for that matter, cheap Chaos Orbs. This is going to create a very different economy to what players are used to. Now, the event might be too short to develop its own stable economy, but if it does, I expect that the Patient Divination card, as well as Nurse and Doctor as higher denominations, will end up being the default currency for larger trades, i.e. the thing that power gamers have an insatiable demand for, they want more of, they want more and more and more of them, and that's because of the near limitless demand for these items that comes from the sort of top 25% of players that use all the Exalted Orbs in a league anyway. Stack decks are probably the thing for smaller trades. I think that they're going to be something that people are going to want a lot of because so many items are only available through stack decks. And as we have a look back at the what's rare but obtainable section before, you'll see there will be things like the Progeny of Lunaris. The only Dying Suns that exist in the league will come from people who rip a Progeny of Lunaris out of a stack deck. There'll be a lot of things like that. And so even though an individual stack deck is not particularly lucrative to open on, as a median value, the average may actually be quite high. And that's why I think there'll be a lot of demand for them. So these factors should apply to both hardcore and softcore trade. That said, in hardcore trade, I do think that patience will be worth a little bit less, and that's because a headhunter isn't forever. In hardcore, you can lose your headhunter if you die, whereas in softcore, once you've got it, you're guaranteed to have it for the remaining days of the event. Now, because of Heist's well-rolled item system, the main use case for currency orbs will be rolling items that cannot drop well-rolled. Particularly, I think this will be cluster jewels. So expect to slam clusters in a way that you would not do in a normal league. So that means if you've got a cluster jewel that's crafted with 3 good mods on it, that's what you're going to be wanting to use your Exalted Orbs on, other than obviously potentially trading them to other players. That's because there's no option to use meta mods. So what demands does this event place upon characters? Firstly, you absolutely must have capacity to proliferate kills. So you need to have some method that killing one enemy can be projected to killing others. This could be heralds, it could be ignite proliferation, it could be corpse explosions. Anything can work, but you need something. If you don't have this, you will get overwhelmed. Some options are more accessible than others here. So for instance, the Crusader influence mod that causes enemies to have a percentage chance to physical damage explode. This is going to be much less accessible in this event than normal. And that's because any Crusader influenced item that drops from an armor chest, 1, that's quite rare, and 2, they will be capped at item level 83. So you, in order to roll the higher tier version that you probably want, which is the one that drops at item level 85, you'll only be able to get that either through the very rare divination card, the White Knight, or alternately through using a Crusader's Exalted Orb on a chest piece. Neither of these are going to be easily done, so as a result, you will find that that's a pretty inaccessible option for kill proliferation. On the flip side, something like the unique wand Obliteration, that's much, much, much more accessible. In fact, every player that wants an Obliteration will have it probably by the time they hit level 60, just by opening unique item chests. So Heist has a lot of monsters with individually small damage hits. This makes life gain on block amazing, as both armor and evasion. Energy Shield, however, is much less so. I don't suggest Chaos Inoculation builds. I'm very open to being proven wrong on this, but my current feeling is that Chaos Inoculation builds will not have enough mitigation. So a build that has 5,000 raw life and that has a number of additional defenses in the form of armor and evasion will be in a much better place than a build that has, say, 12,000 energy shield but has no damage mitigation. Corpse removal is not important. This is something that's quite different to the normal game, where corpse removal is actually somewhat of a defensive layer. In Heist, there's just not very much that, if anything at all, that causes enemies to explode, dealing retributive damage after the monster is dead. Cold and Chaos resistances are the least important in Heist. Fire and lightning damage is common. That said, cold resistance is still important to get. Chaos resistance is something that is sort of useful in Heist, but it's far less essential than it is in sections of the game like Betrayal. You won't be facing as much chaos damage as you would in mapping. And of course, aura rares are the biggest single danger in Heist. This is haste aura, physical damage auras, all these things can be terrifying. Anyways, that's all my initial theory crafting thoughts. There'll certainly be more coming on this, and I'm going to keep thinking on this front, and I expect that there'll be a bunch of things I've missed that people will correct me about down in the comments below. If you're in doubt though, play Champion, Gladiator, Juggernaut, Occultist, or Necromancer to be tanky. Necromancer is not intrinsically tanky, but becomes it when you get the effect of offerings on yourself, or alternately a Scion that is Gladiator and Necromancer can also be really tanky. As dominant as Seismic Trap has been in the Gauntlet event, it's probably not going to be nearly as good here. It's still a fine choice for a build, and if you want to play it and you haven't played it, then maybe it's time to do so. But Seismic Trap's greatest strength is boss damage on dumpster tier gear, and bossing just isn't that critical in Endless Heist. So that's all I got on this. If you've got any thoughts, definitely fire away below. Otherwise, may your Varlobs have interesting results, and I will see you around.